Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Intentional Guy. We are on air with Donna Tashjian. Did I say that correct, Donna?
You did well. Donna Tashjian.
So good to have you on our show today. I'm excited about this. Um, you know, everything in life is about choices,
Yeah.
and that's what our show's about, is about being intentional in the choices we make. And I am a living proof of that.
Hmm.
I woke up one day and said, "You get to choose to just, make the choices. You're the one. God's not going to force you to make the right choices." And I had to start being present in life. I think I lived in a fog, and I just let life lead me instead of me leading it. And I like what you're there because that day that I made that choice, I chose joy. And I live in joy today that I didn't think this kind of joy existed. I
Yeah.
really didn't. But it all comes down to being intentional in what we're doing. And so Donna's a life coach. She has a great website. There's a couple things I'm going to let her tell you some of that stuff because I think some of you can really benefit from it. And I'm going to just hand this over to you, Donna. I'd love for you to share your story, share us about choosing joy, and enlighten us today, if you would please.
Well, a little bit about me. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Vibrant Living. And my passion as a life mastery coach is to help people live vibrantly. And it's often said that people who coach on something is usually something that they've had to overcome. Even podcast, when you do a podcast, it's something that you've learned that you're wanting to share with others. And so it's very much the same for me. Um, I had a little bit of a rough childhood, but I had some major trauma at the age of 14. I became pregnant and it wasn't consensual without going into the details.
Mm,
And there are times in our life when we don't feel like we have a choice, when things happen to us that are out of our control, trauma, abuse, you know, car accidents, illnesses, all kinds of things feel like that they're not in our control to choose. I had a little girl at the age of 15 and I raised her on my own. I lived with my parents for a few years and then finished high school, got a full time job. So I was at 18, I had a 3-year old working full time, going to college 2 nights a week and raising her all by
mm,
myself. Um, and there were the where I got my strength from was I had at a young age, a relationship with God. I know that's what saved me because I could have easily believed because I had such low self-esteem, nobody's going to love me, nobody's going to want me. I'm worthless now. All of those feel anger, resentment, frustration, all my dreams are gone that I thought I was going to have. Everything's changed. And I could have easily sought love in all the wrong places and repeated behavior that a trauma that occurred.
right.
But the thing that changed was I had a relationship with God, and we're talking about choosing and choosing joy. I recently, when I was telling my story more in depth with a bunch of women, so we really got into the nitty gritty of that story. Um, and somebody said, Donna, you are a walking miracle. And I smiled, hugged them, thanked them, and I walked away and I went, God, this walking miracle was one decision after another decision in those midnight dark hours when it doesn't look like it's going to work. Making a decision to choose what you want, not what you don't want, to choose to be who you want to be, not who you feel like you are. All of the excuse me, all of those moments is what leads to what looks like it was. I stepped, abracadabra, I'm a walking miracle. And it wasn't that way
Yes.
at all. What do you think about that?
I resonate with that because that's me right now. I Right now you see the joy part of me. Now this is the payoff where me and my
Mhm.
wife are living our best life right now. And I had a friend of mine say, "Well, you guys just seem like you have it all together." Well, one, we don't,
No.
you know, but second of all, you just see this part of the journey. You didn't see the other parts of the journey.
Yeah.
It was 15 years and I loathed myself. There was times in this journey that I totally disliked myself. I and my listeners know this because I've said it before. I woke up every day, Donna, for most of my life saying, I hate me, you know?
Mm.
And what happened was and I never dealt with, I was sexually abused as a child. And no one in my family ever knew about it until this past year when I wrote my book because I never
Mm.
dealt with that, you know?
Yeah.
But that one event in my life,
Yep. Changes everything.
it did. And not to make excuses for myself for bad
Mm.
choices, but
Yeah.
when you do not work on the trauma that
Yeah.
is in your life and you do not come to grips with that trauma and seek help from that trauma, you will react.
It doesn't go
Um,
away.
no.
And it doesn't
And
go away. And what is hidden comes to light one way or the other. But when we turn the light on it, when we choose to turn the light on it and to deal with it, it takes away the power of it.
it
It takes
does.
away the strength of it. But
It
when
does.
we try to keep it hidden because of shame and embarrassment and all the stuff that, you know, my parents hid me in
Mhm.
the age I was, in the social setting, in the years that
Right.
that occurred. Um, I was hidden and it wasn't okay, no matter what the circumstances were. And so there was so much shame and embarrassment, and still nobody talks about it. I was just like Mary, magically pregnant, and no one talks about it in my family. And it's okay that they don't now, but because I've talked about it, I've dealt with it,
Yes.
but it's not. My mother couldn't handle it, and so there's no reason at her age to even bring that kind of stuff up with everything. But learning to be able to, for me, to quit hiding, to quit feeling shameful, and to get help. That's the other thing, is we are major DIYers. We're
Mhm.
going to read a book. Even just listening to a podcast. We're
Yes.
going to attend a webinar. We're going to do all of this research. And without learning how to actually get help, to learn how to have someone who's walked this path before us and who can, there is something so powerful for someone who understands,
Yes.
who just understands. They can't make it better, but they understand, because that pain, that trauma that you and I occurred is isolating.
Yes.
And no one, and we feel, even in a crowd, we're all alone. No one gets us.
Yeah.
And that is devastating to especially a young person's psyche as
Yeah.
well.
Well, and trauma, certain types of trauma, they really affect your self-esteem, your self-worth, your value, all that. And the longer you live with that, the further you go hiding it, the deeper it takes root inside of you. And for me, it was after me and my wife, we were in a bad car wreck, and oh, it was terrible. I suffered some PTSD from it, things like that. Uh, but it was through I had a great counselor, and that counselor was able to peel back the onion of me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we could get to that because we dealt we it I found a safe place. I dealt
Right.
with it, and I
Right.
love what you said. One When we put light on it, what we're so afraid of, we'll be amazed at, why didn't I take care of this sooner? Because
Yes.
one, the enemy's given us a lie that we're going to be rejected, we're going to be this,
Right.
that. all this stuff. And most of the things that I feared were not true.
Right.
And once I put light on it, that's when the freedom started to begin inside of me,
Yes.
so
Absolutely. It just starts with a choice that you're going to not stay where you are. At some point, you woke up and said, I'm not going to stay here. I don't know how, but I'm not going to stay where I am. And learning to be able to get a vision of, even if it's just a little vision, that I want something to be different, is a huge part of choosing joy. So I illustrate it this way: whatever you focus on is magnified. Whatever you give attention to grows. So if you give attention to, this happened to me, I'm not worth anything, why would anybody, etc., then that is growing. But if I give attention to, that happened to me, it's part of me, but I'm going to use it to grow, to help others, to become stronger than I ever was before. I don't know that it's a really great attitude, but the teenager girl in me said, I'm going to prove them wrong.
yeah.
And, you know, if for you listening to the audio, I have red hair, got a little bit of sass, and I'm just like, I'm going to prove them all wrong. I don't know how I'm going to prove them all wrong, but I am not worthless. I am worth something, even when I don't feel like it, and I am going to prove them wrong, and I don't know how.
Yeah.
And so that was part of my story, is beginning to get a vision of what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Most of the guys that wanted to go out with me, who found out I had a little girl, thought I was an easy mark.
Mm.
But when I met my husband, it just shows you the caliber of different men. And I met my husband, he said, I don't know what happened to her, but she's not what they're saying.
Right.
And, and learning to be able to, as I believed in myself, learning to be able to accept that and know that what happened to us does not have to define us unless we let it. My paradigm that I teach my clients is your past does not determine your future without your permission.
Yeah.
So think about that. Your past, I don't care what it was, losing a job, moral failure, whatever you may have done and had in your life, you may have royally messed up and it was in your control. It doesn't matter. There's always hope.
Yes.
That's one of the things I want to bring across today, is there's always hope.
Yes.
That no matter what it is, my past doesn't have to determine my future. And my mission is to help people to rise above the pain and disappointment of life, to be able to live vibrantly, to live free. To what the heck does freedom mean? Right? When you're in the middle of that, you don't even have a clue what that means. What does
Right.
joy mean? You don't even know. You don't even grasp it. But I'm telling you that there's more, and that it's possible to do it. One of the big things about releasing our past is just asking this simple question. It may not make sense when I first say it, but I'll repeat it and we'll go into it a little bit. Is, what am I making that incident mean about me?
Mm.
And so when we ask that question, we get more to the root. I made that mean something was wrong with me, is the easiest, most common answer.
So,
Something was
like
bad about me. Go ahead.
so, like, just for my listeners to get that, I like that, because take a moment and think, let's say it's a divorce, you know, what does that what put that in the question in that question. And what was the question again? Say it again in that context.
Well, I have a client that has that story, so I'll explain it with a story.
Okay.
I had a woman who came to me. She had 3 little kids. She had a 1-year-old and twins that were 5. And her husband, inside the church, had an affair with another woman. Now, she came to me to help her through the process. Now, as we were working together, I also found out he was an alcoholic. And she had been, for anybody who's in alcoholism in a family, you know what you do to cover and make him look
Yeah.
good and to keep everything happy and keep the kids quiet so there's no triggers and all the stuff and all the things that are
Right.
going on with that. And so if she believed him doing that meant I'm not pretty enough. I'm a little bit overweight after 3 kids. Something's wrong with me. I wondered, and she had a rough past with her dad, so her self-esteem was a little bit low as well. And so it just morphed into this where she's eating because that's the only comfort she can find. And then she's beating herself up because she's getting overweight
Right.
through this whole process. But it was his failure. It was his alcoholism and his moral failure that was the problem, not how beautiful she was. And so we make things mean that she was the problem, and she wasn't the problem.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that in a divorce that we both don't have sides, but sometimes in those kind of settings, it had nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I even take it from his point of view. Let's say you're in the divorce, but it's because of behaviors with you. It's a
right.
great question to ask because
Absolutely. That's
you
a
need
great one.
to evaluate yourself. You do not have to continue down that road.
Right.
You don't have to
Absolutely.
continue to suffer loss for this, and that doesn't have to be your identity. You
Correct.
can change that with it. Am I correct? Because
Absolutely correct.
I see
And
both
both
sides of
sides
that.
of it, both sides of anytime there's this kind of trauma going on, there's pain in every capacity.
Yes.
And so, yes, it doesn't matter. Like I had said before, if you were the one that made the mistake, if you will,
Yeah.
that there is always hope. We don't have to let, um, a bad choice be my future choices.
Correct.
We can make different choices to choose the biggest uh, deception. That's the word I'm looking for, is that we don't have a choice.
Yeah. Because
And
that's
there
just a
are
lie.
times that both you and I have felt like that we didn't, right? We
Right.
couldn't hardly get out of
Correct.
bed and we didn't feel like we had a choice.
Correct.
But we always have a choice. And it's just realizing that I don't know how to choose, but just begin to say, I'm going to choose. I
Yes.
do have the power to choose and take back the power, authority, whatever you wish, because we are not robots. We all
Correct.
have a choice on whether I'm going to be kind, whether I'm going to be resentful, whether I'm going to be angry, whether I'm going to forgive.
Yeah.
And forgiveness is a whole nother subject on choosing joy.
Yes.
Without forgiveness, there is no freedom
No.
and there is no joy.
And I love what you're saying because you know it is everything's a choice. So you're listening to this podcast and your world seems crappy for a better lack of words. And it's just a hot mess, you know? You have to take a self-evaluation of yourself. For me, I had a major moral fall. And Donna, it took me 15 years to find restoration.
Mhm.
The hardest part and the longest part of the journey was accepting my
Yes.
moral failure and choosing not to let that be my what defines me.
Right.
That was the longest part because once I took the first step of change to choose joy,
Mhm.
once because I what I said was to myself, this is who I want to be. This
Right.
is and you know what? God was like, and this is who I've created you to be. And I
Absolutely.
was like, "That's what I want. I wanna know who is God created." Because I had a friend who said, during the very bottom of it, asked me, Mike, how does God see you? And my answer was horrible. And he's like, no, that's not how God sees you. And I wanted to know what that was,
Yeah.
right? Once I took that first step, though, Donna, the journey was not as long as I thought it was going to be
Right.
to get there. The longest part was me surrendering
Yeah.
to it, to the process, and to choose joy.
It's it's the biggest thing that most people have trouble with is forgiving themselves.
Oh, yes. I felt like I needed to be punished,
Yeah.
and therefore I could not accept forgiveness.
Yeah. I recently heard a woman that I went to see her in person. You probably have heard of her, Joyce Myers.
Oh, yes.
And she did a just how she drops these nuggets anyway. So she just says, let's talk about guilt for a minute. She says, do you understand? She says, guilt is that I feel like I need to be punished for whatever it is. So if it's a little thing, I need to feel guilty for a couple hours. If it's a medium-sized thing, couple days, need to feel guilty, need to punish myself. And if it's a really big thing, it could go on for a long time. I got to punish myself. And she says, what we don't realize is that what we're saying is that Jesus's death on the cross wasn't enough punishment.
Mm, yes. Yes.
Somehow I need to be punished too
Hmm.
for what I did when, if we talk about the horrific death that he had on our behalf, that wasn't enough. And not that we mean it, but what a slap in the face
Right.
to say to Jesus, sorry, what you did wasn't enough. And so when we can look at it that boldly, that drastically, that we can say, no, his payment was enough. And I don't know how to forgive myself, but I'm going to start today
Yeah.
and begin to let go of the guilt, because forgiveness seems to take forever, but it's done in a second.
Yeah.
It's over in a second. God, forgive me. I receive your forgiveness and I forgive myself.
Mm,
Forgiveness is an onion, and it is a process.
yeah.
So learning to be able to say it the next day when you start to feel guilty, and say it the next moment if you feel guilty. No, I've forgiven myself. I've let that go. And that is a huge process, to be able to it not taking forever. Doesn't have to take forever. Just begin to know the price has been paid. You don't have to be punished. Sometimes there's consequences for our
Yep.
choices,
Correct.
but you don't have to be punished. And there's a difference between the
Exactly.
two. So if I rob a bank, I can be forgiven, but I may go to jail.
Correct.
Um, so those kinds of is an example of consequences versus punishment. Learning to be able to separate those two, and choosing that we can have more, because Jesus came to give us life in abundance. And I don't know about you, but one of my quests in life is to receive everything he paid for.
Yes.
I don't want his payment of anything: health, wealth, prosperity, relationships, touching people's lives. I want it all. I
Yeah.
want to be able to make a difference, and you can have it too. He did it for all of us because he loves us like that.
Mm, yes. Amen. Exactly. It took me forever to accept. I could see that for other people, but it was hard to accept it for myself. And that's why I want to promote you now a little bit, okay? That's where I think a life coach comes in great, or a
Yeah,
counselor or something like that, because sometimes we need someone on the outside that can look in and give us truth that
right.
we may not be able to see, because the lies are truth to us,
Yes.
and I like what you said in your paradigm. A paradigm shift needs to take place in our life, and a paradigm shift can only take place when we get the right information that will
Yes.
change that paradigm. And so you're if you're listening to this, you're probably missing some truths. And someone like Donna can give you some truth in your life that then that gives you a paradigm shift. And now everything is so different,
Yes.
you know? So Donna, tell us a little bit about your life coach. I know you have um, an online course and some other things that might be beneficial or helpful to some people maybe going through this.
I have several coaching programs that I work with people in, and one of my signature programs is called Turn Your Baggage into Luggage so you can create the life you've loved. And that is working with women to be able to help them to overcome the past and figure out how to repack their luggage so that they can not have bags anymore. Let's go on a trip and have a great life,
Right.
kind of a feeling. I have a free masterclass that I have released, and it is called Unlocking Your Six Extraordinary Gifts That You
Right.
Were Born With, that you probably are not aware. And so these are gifts that God has given us to be able to utilize, to be able to create a life we love. When we
Now,
use
is that just for women, or
it,
is
is
that
not anyone can go.
so that would be beneficial to men
Yep.
too?
It would be beneficial to every single person, yes.
Great.
And it is set up on my homepage as instant access. All you do is put in your name and email, and you get it sent to you right then. And you get to watch it immediately. So there's no signing up for it later or watching it a different time. You can watch it when you want to at your convenience. I teach for an hour on these six gifts, and there's a guidebook to go along with it. It is, and the link will be here for you so you can check it out.
Yes. Awesome. Great. Well, I'm going to recommend I because I know some of my listeners um battle with exactly what we've talked about today. I've heard from them, and I want to encourage you guys right now in this moment um to choose joy. And I'm going to do something I've not done before on a show, but I want to take a minute and I want to pray for you guys who are listening right now that are in this trap of life where the enemy has you paralyzed and you can't. I want you to know that the power of God is stronger than anything that has you bound to this world. Okay. So Donna, do you mind? Let's just pray. I want to pray for
Never
everyone
mind at
real quick.
all.
God, thank you for this evening. Thank you for bringing Donna to us, God. What such a gift today, and illustrations, Lord, of your love for us and what you've done on the cross for us, Lord, and that your blood you shed covered a multitude of sin, God. It covered all our sins, and Lord, it was enough. And even though some people are listening right now, God, and they feel bound and trapped by the enemy, I pray that right now you will rain down your love on them, and God, that you will help them to make that first choice to actually take a step forward and choose joy. And God, we know that when we say choose joy, that means they choose you, God, to follow you, the path that you've put down. And Lord, that it's not impossible, but it's just right there. And it's just one choice away. So God, I just pray that you'll be with those who needs this prayer right now, Lord. They know as you're listening, you know that this prayer is for you, and know that God hears your pain. He hears your voice, and he is here to forgive you and to help you move forward in your life. In your God, in your precious name. Amen. Thank you, Donna. I've not done that, but I've really felt like that was needed, that someone today probably needed that. And I really enjoyed our talk and our conversation.
I
And
have one other thought that keeps coming up to me, if I can share that,
please,
um, about forgiveness and our feelings. When we're choosing joy, one of the biggest thing is you made the statement, I didn't feel like I could be forgiven. I didn't feel like it. And so one of the questions I ask in my workshops is, and in coaching, is are your emotions, does that equal, if it was a mathematic equation, does that equal truth?
correct.
And the answer is no.
Yeah.
But we guide our life as is, oh, well, he doesn't like me. I feel like he doesn't like me. I feel like she doesn't like me. And we equate our feelings to truth. So
Yeah.
this is a writer downer. What your emotions are, what your feelings are indicators of your beliefs. It does not equal truth.
That
And
is so
so
good.
when you begin to realize that if you looked at your emotions as indicator lights on our dashboard of our cars, your oil is low, check your tires, that kind of thing. If you're like, I'm feeling grumpy, I'm feeling irritated, and you look at your emotions as indicator lights of something that's going on that you need attention to, as
Mhm.
opposed to truth. If you can separate emotions from truth, it will give you a level of freedom.
Yes.
And having a coach helps you walk through that. But that's one of the reasons why we don't say, I forgive is a choice of my will. It is not an emotion. And we want to wait till we feel like it.
Yeah.
And it's not a feeling, it's a choice.
Mm.
And it doesn't equal. It's just like in marriage. At some point, I've been married 38 years this year, and there have been days I didn't really like him.
Yeah.
But love is a choice, not a feeling.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the feelings catch up because the beliefs, the things that I'm irritated are showing my beliefs and what I'm believing about the situation. He said he would be home for dinner. He didn't. That means he doesn't really love me.
Right.
Yeah, or whatever. Do you see how that was my belief? It had nothing to do with really what happened. He had a flat tire. It wasn't about me, but I'm making it about me. So
Well, and
anyway,
I would love to look at coming back, maybe in a month here and looking over forgiveness with you,
okay.
and kind of doing that because I think, um, we're just scratching the surface,
We
and
are. I've done multiple episodes on forgiveness.
I would love to do that with you. I really one connect with what you're saying,
Yeah.
um, because I walked that road. Maybe not as well articulate as you are in telling it, and that's why, you know, I would like to do that, maybe go down the road of forgiveness because everything you said, I just resonate because I was trapped in that where my feelings were my truth, and feelings will lie to you.
Yes.
Feelings will absolutely lie to you, and the enemy will use feelings to guide you. And uh, you need to be guided by facts and truth, not by the emotions and feelings
Yeah.
that will
Anyway,
only last for a little
that
bit.
was a lot to drop right at the end, but I'm like, this keeps coming up
That's
for me.
That's perfect because, like I said, we've scratched the surface of this. So, Donna, thank you for joining us today. I'll definitely be looking forward to some more conversations with you in the future. To our listeners out there, I hope this has been encouraging to you. I know it has been very encouraging to me today. And until next time, I'm just going to tell you guys keep being intentional, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you, Donna.
Bye.